Okay, chapter 3 on God Will Work With You But Not For You, a Living Philosophy by Lao Russell. Chapter 3 What am I? Question: What am I? Answer: You are an individual expression of intelligence. You are an invisible entity centering a visible body, which is your instrument for expressing yourself. Your individuality is the sum total of every thought you have ever had since your beginning as a single cell of protoplasm, which desired to be a bigger and better cell. It is commonly believed that the visible body is the individual entity instead of the invisible intelligence which centers and controls it. Therefore, it is imperative to fully understand the relationship between the two. Whatever your body is, you are the cause of it. Material bodies cannot grow, or live and die, or decay of themselves alone. You cannot live you cannot lift your little finger without desire telegraphed to it by your intelligence through your brain along a nerve wire. Your body is but a carbon copy of your own dictation. It is the product of your own creation. Whatever there is in your body, your thinking has put it there. If you listen to a tape recording of your voice and find it interrupted by a cough or sneeze, you know that you put that cough or sneeze into it. People are seemingly totally unaware that emotions of sorrow, frustration, worry, anger, fear, unkindness, or any inharmonious thought will as automatically be recorded in their bodies as the cough or sneeze are recorded in their tape recorder. That is why people often say when illness afflicts them, "How can this happen to me?" They never realized that somewhere at some time they themselves have either planted the seed for it by their own thinking or by the many causes outside of themselves in their environment, from which no human can completely immunize himself. Your personality is what you cause it to be. You have complete control over that. Your body is what your limited control makes it become, but your environment very strongly affects your ability to control it. Your power of control is measured by your knowledge. You have probably never thought of that. Outside environment shares control with you in such ills as cold, malaria, typhus, and other contagions, but the so-called degenerative diseases such as cancer, stomach ulcers, tumors, and heart disease are completely under your control and therefore self-inflicted. Knowledge of their cause, however, will give you the power to cancel them by reversing the process which created them. Two complete chapters are devoted to this subject later. We give names to our bodies with the belief that the body named Anna or John is the individual person. We do not give thought to the invisible soul, which is the source of our individuality. Individuality means separateness, or the difference in personalities. We see the difference in people only through the manifestations of their thoughts as they express them in action. For that reason, it is quite natural that we attribute the individuality to the body. All individuals have different desires. Their thoughts express their desires. The body automatically records the image of their desires. The individual who would think in inventive thoughts differs from the individual who would be satisfied on an assembly line. The assembly line worker does not look like the inventor. His thoughts would create a different type. Each individual becomes what he thinks. No two people have ever thought the same combination of thoughts. That is why there can be no two individuals who are exactly alike. A man who loves the work of Shakespeare, Tennyson, Beethoven, Mozart, and Raphael have an entirely different individuality from one who desires to run to murder stories, detective stories, prize fights, and other sensuous pleasures. You cannot see the thoughts of desire for either of these two individuals. You cannot see the thoughts or desires of either of these two individuals, but you can observe their personalities. Every individual expresses his personality through everything he does, whether it is a visible or invisible action. A personality can be judged by his postures and gestures, by his actions alone and in public, his reaction when he wins or loses a game, his appreciation or lack of interest in cultural things, his generosity, friendliness, or selfishness, and a host of other visible evidences of his character. There are countless invisible evidences, however, such as the way he expresses himself in letters, how he answers the telephone or words a telegram. Even his handwriting gives strong evidence of his innate individuality. All these visible and invisible evidences are proof that no man can avoid revealing his thoughts to his fellow man. The individual whose desire is prize fighting or wrestling makes the type of body which tells the world what kind of individual he is. No one would mistake him for a poet or a typist. Likewise, the man who desires to be a runner will make his body into a lithe form of a runner. Very few people realize their thoughts and desires are immediately stamped on their faces and bodies. A happy individual who has a high sense of humor attracts others to him. The corners of his mouth turn upward, and his eyes twinkle in friendliness. Such an individual makes many friends because he has friendly thoughts and desires. He attracts people by the happy individuality which he has stamped upon his body. Every portrait painter who studies the face he is painting can clearly see his sitter's emotional history. The sitter's whole life seems to gradually unfold before him. Very often his or her selfish or frustrated thoughts are so vividly stamped upon the face that the painter finds it necessary to drive such thoughts away by interjecting happy thoughts. When anyone applies for a position, he creates either a pleasant or unpleasant impression at once. That impression is not given by his present thoughts, for one might assume a happy attitude to give a pleasant impression. The keen eye and intuition of the experienced personnel manager gathers a life impression at first glance, which many tell him not to employ this one or to employ that one. He intuitively knows a strong or weak character, one he could or could not trust, or one who has initiative to whom he could give responsibility, or one who would watch the clock with eagerness for closing time. Every dramatic school stresses the necessity for its students to actually think the thought of the characters they are impersonating, even when they are not speaking. The audience must see you think. They say you must become your character. You must show fear, anger, or other emotions every second while acting them. Your body gestures change with every emotion, just as your face changes. You can see this by illustration that the body is not the individual who acts through it. A good actor who may be a very gentle individual can impersonate a murderer by sending a different combination of thoughts through his body to make his body manifest a different individuality from his own. It is not clear to you, therefore, that your body is only a canvas upon which you are painting your own portrait. An artist can paint the portraits of many different individuals upon the same canvas, or an actor can make his body express many types of individuals by temporarily thinking another combination of thoughts. You can also transform yourself permanently into a higher type of individual by thinking other thoughts than you have been thinking. If you wish to transform your individuality into a greater one, begin thinking great thoughts, beautiful thoughts, powerful and friendly thoughts, and your personality will immediately reflect your changed thinking. Your face will have a different expression in every detail, as well as your whole bearing. Your very posture and gestures will make you as a transformed being. You will eventually walk differently, A criminal does not walk the way a scholar walks, nor are his postures and gestures the same. The criminal shows fear in his walk if he is hunted, or he slinks and crouches instead of walking erect as a man of noble character does. You become what you want to become, and your very aura will tell the world what standard of intelligence the individual is whom your body impersonates. There are no limits which you cannot reach if your desires are great enough. Your being will always tell of your greatness and the standard of individual you are. A good example of this fact is a body of a A good example of this fact is a body of a piano. It cannot make a sound itself, but with a great master musician ex- but when a great master musician expresses his thoughts through it, the world knows that a great individual intelligence controls that body. Conversely, a sensuous individual will extend his physical sensuousness through that same piano body, and the world will know that an entirely different type of individual controls it. Consider the effect of each individual upon the human race as a whole. One uplifts the whole world culturally while the other drags it down. An inspired genius re inspires others to great heights of spiritual ecstasy. He awakens the divinity in others and uplifts them to the realms of their spiritual natures, which makes them forget their bodies. The physically sensuous musician creates just the opposite effect. His jazz rhythms drag them to lower physical levels and awaken all of the physical desires of bodies. He manufactures his type of individuality. The more knowledge you acquire of God's plan of creation and his processes of creation, the more you will comprehend your power over your body. You cannot command that which you do not know. Every individual acts as he believes. If what he believes is not true, however, his actions are not right actions. He hurts himself instead of helping himself. His series of actions, however, constitute his individuality or personality. The greater your knowledge of what you are, the greater your conscious intelligence can build and control a body to manifest your individual intelligence. If you desire to become what is known as a great person, first ask yourself if your thinking is directed inwardly toward your soul self or outwardly toward the objective universe through your senses. There are only two types of individuals in this world, however: those who think inwardly toward their spiritual selves, and those who think outwardly toward their physical senses. All people think both ways, but a Mozart or Leonardo type thinks inwardly most of the time, while the masses think outwardly most of the time. A Beethoven is a spiritual individual whose senses of values lie in giving out the abundance of his self to the world, while a Napoleon is a physical individual whose sense of values lies in the taking of material possessions for personal aggrandizement. The strange thing about individuality is the misconception of its meaning to the average person. The great individual is one who gradually loses his individuality as increased God awareness in him makes him become universal. Therefore, the highest aim in life is to lose your individuality in order to attain universality. The greater the God awareness in any man, the closer he is to complete mind oneness. The completed journey of life ends in omnipotence and omniscience of man's universality with God. Chapter 4. Why am I here? Question: why am I here? Answer: you are here to manifest God, your Creator, as one unit of the idea of man. You are here to become an actor in the cosmic drama of cause and effect, which the master playwright has conceived to express the idea of love, upon which basis the universe is founded. That means that you are to take the very long journey of life which begins in a single cell of protoplasm. That single cell is centered by your soul, which is your mind control. During the long ages of building your body under the guidance and constant cooperation of your centering soul, the journey takes millions of years of gradual transformation from physical awareness of body to spiritual awareness of mind. The journey ends in complete universality or oneness with God. The journey of the unfoldment of the man idea, which we call the human race, is divided into 5 stages. They are as follows. The first stage was the primate, unmoral, instinctively controlled period of mere bodybuilding and fighting for survival. Man, the fighter and procurer of food, was supreme. Woman was only considered man's chattel and slave. This stage ended at the dawn of consciousness. The second stage is the present pagan or barbarian sense dominated stage. It is the beginning of awareness between right and wrong, and the elevation of woman to an ever increasing importance, but that but never of sufficient importance to create a balanced civilization. Even today it is still a man's world. Instinctive control lessens a man rec- Instinctive control lessens a man recognizes the unfolding of mind and exists and exercises free will. The barbarian stage is characterized by greed for material possessions and power over others, which it acquired by might over right practices. This barbarian stage will continue as long as man kills man, believes in evil, and suppresses woman to less than full equality with man. The third stage is the mind dominated first stage of consciousness, or the genius period. It is the second moral period of higher ideals and greater God awareness. It is also the first stage where man knowingly becomes co creator with God by being able to transfer invisible mind idea into visible body forms. The genius fully comprehends the rhythms of God's language and interprets those rhythms for other men. The barbarian of the genius stage over the barbarian and the genius stages overlap, for there have been for there have already been several hundred geniuses along the billions of barbarians. During the genius stage, the idea of evil almost entirely disappears. The fourth stage is the cosmic conscious period of unfolding. It is the higher moral and spiritual stage of complete God awareness. This period is distinctly marked by the disappearance of instinctive control, sense of evil, and forgetfulness of body. This is the stage of the mystic who is almost fully omniscient and omnipotent. 20 or 30 humans have already reached this high stage. The fifth stage is Christ consciousness, or complete awareness of unity with God. This is the final stage of universality, omniscience, and omnipotence in man. In the Christ conscious being, love has been fully manifested on earth, and evil has fully disappeared. One man has ever reached this final stage of all men. In order to better comprehend the plan of life and man's purpose on earth, we will review the 5 stages in more detail. Primate man, first stage. The main idea with the slow building of a body when the planet spirals far enough away from the sun to have prepared the conditions which are necessary for the unfoldment of human life. The first cycles of man's life start with a few minutes duration and increase in duration over a period of millions of years as desire for a body adds more and more cells. Single cells first divide into male and female opposites by the polarizing power of the electric current of nature. As cells multiply, however, their ever complexing patterns must be recorded in the soul seed record. Life cycles gradually lengthen by that complexing and recording processes. Wait, life cycles gradually life cycles gradually lengthen by that complexing and recording process until the life cycle nears 80 years. The period of gestation has also lengthened from a few minutes to 9 months. Everything the body needs to fulfill its desires, it borrows from the earth and returns every milligram of those borrowings to the earth when it can no longer function as a body. Desire gradually creates all bodies, cell by cell. Body unfoldment keeps pace with desire for body. Desire adds new parts and new abilities. Each new part, which is extended from its center of control, must be wired to that center in order that it may be operated from its centering intelligence. That which we call wiring is an electric machine made by man. We shall call sensing in living organic machines created by God. The senses of the body are two-way message carriers to all parts of the body, from the mind through the brain and back again. It is commonly supposed that we have five senses: hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and seeing. We have but one sense, however, the sense of feeling. We have through our eyes and ears, our palate, our bodies, and our nostrils. The one sense of feeling is the vibration of the electric universe as it passes through our nerves. That sense of electric vibration is the only thing which makes the body aware of its existence. When the body is electrically charged, it has an electrical awareness of body existence. Without sufficient electrical charge in a body to send vibration impulses along its wires, it has no sense of existence. That is what happens when one sleeps. As the body extends in complexity and mass, its centering seat of sensation, which we call the brain, also enlarges its two growing electric battery cells, which act as self-starters for body activities. This two-lobe electric storage battery, which the brain is, has no knowledge whatsoever. It is no more related to intelligence than one's fingernail. The seat of intelligence, or mind, or soul, is located in the pituitary gland. When the mind thinks, it expresses its desire electrically through the brain. When the body batteries are sufficiently charged to motivate the brain. Very few people think with their mind, however. They sense with their brain by releasing its stored up records, which we call memories. The entire office of the brain is to receive, transmit, and record sensations. When it has sufficient electrical charge to operate the body machine, all storage batteries run down, however. Human, animal, and vegetable storage batteries become completely discharged daily. They become like dead batteries of your car, being unable to send messages to other parts of the body. The senses lose all of their electrical awareness. The body loses all sense of existence for a period of several hours every day. When our electric batteries thus become discharged, we say we are asleep. When our heartbeat renews its power to charge our batteries, we say we are awake. We also say other things which are not true to nature's plan. We say that we are unconscious. If we use that word in the sense that implies our consciousness ceases. Our consciousness is our immortal and eternal intelligence that never ceases. Mind intelligence is always conscious, but the thinking of mind is electric. Electricity is divided into action and rest periods, which we call cycles. One half of every electric cycle starts from rest and extends into multiplied action. This could be likened to a man's awakening from rest and working hard all day. The other half divides the power for an action and returns to rest, as a man does when he can no longer work and must rest. That is the life-death principle of electric bodies. To live, they must start from rest in their seed to grow into action. To die, they must reverse the process and decay into rest in their seed consciousness. In their seed. Consciousness has no life death cycles. Consciousness belongs to the immortality of mind. It is eternally changeless. The misconception of the so called state of unconsciousness is based on the premise that the brain is the mind, instead of being only a switchboard through which the mind can think, or the senses can operate when it is sufficiently charged. That which is really the conscious mind is what is presumed to be the subconscious mind. There is no subconscious mind. Mind is not a mind is not stratified. There is only mind at rest and mind in action, which means thinking. When you sleep thinking you are unconscious, when you sleep thinking you are unconscious, your intelligence is as wide awake as it always is. But you have turned off the electric current which allows you to think or sense through your body. You will comprehend this better if you sleep into your car and press the self-starter button. Nothing happens. You say that its batteries are dead. You do not say that it is asleep. Neither do you say it is unconscious. You are the conscious intelligence which enters and controls the motivation of your car, but you cannot move it. If you awaken it by charging its batteries for 10 minutes, you will move a little, but it will not have full power to move until fully charged. Likewise, you can awaken a man who has slept only a short time, and he can move, but he could not fulfill a normal day of activity until he has caught up with his sleeping, which means until his batteries have been fully recharged. This misconception about subconscious and superconscious mind is a deterrent to the principle which says, "Man, know thyself," which is necessary for mankind in order that he can steer his ship through the complex dangers of the sea of life. During man's whole first stage, he builds his body and fights for its survival by instinctive control from his centering soul. He has no will of his own. He merely obeys the electric messages sent through his nerve wiring, and he obeys these commands as automatically as a stone falls directly toward the center of gravity. When a telegram is sent through a wire, the wire has no comprehension whatsoever the idea contained in the message. Neither does primate man have any idea of the commands which are sent through his senses. He merely lives and obeys his instincts, the way birds, insects, and other living bodies obey. As he continues to obey, he builds his body and adds constantly to it. He constantly transforms his body, and his brain enlarges to meet its complexing needs. His slanting forehead straightens, his crouching body stands erect, and his massive jaws grow smaller. During this entire period, he has no creative faculty whatsoever. He can reason somewhat with his senses, but he never even created a boat nor a sail, wheel, or fire until after the dawn of mind awareness in him. Likewise, he had no moral sense, either of good or evil, until consciousness first dawned in him, which was only about 15,000 years ago in man's history. During the entire primate period, which had no place of importance in man's life other than as chattel. During the entire primate period, woman had no place of importance in man's life other than as chattel. Man fought for family survival. Survival and fighting for it was the thing of first import. Nothing else counted. The primate world was entirely a man's world. Pagan barbarian man. The second stage of man's unfolding is the pagan or barbarian age we are now in. It began when first faint suspicion of a higher power than man entered his consciousness, he then began to think, to reason, to discover flame, the boat, the sail, for the boat, and the wheel. The idea of mortality dawned in his unfolding awareness. He divided right from wrong. There was good and evil. He began to command matter by knowing about matter. He commanded the earth to yield harvests for him, and made implements to multiply his command. Woman worked with him in the ground. She raised his sheep, his goats, his cattle. She made tents and raiment. Woman began to be important in man's esteem instead of only in his life. The forever search for the great unknown led to sun worship, demon worship, and idol worship. Man then made gods of wood, of stone, man gods, always man gods, made in man's image for man. Long centuries passed when the one God was envisioned by man. Still he remembered the male God made in the image of man for man. Man made him to be like man, to be pleased with the shedding of blood, to be wrathful, vengeful, and quick to anger. Men worshipped their male god of wrath at altars drenched with blood. Tens of thousands of sheep, goats, bullocks were slain to appease God in hope of remission of sins. Neophytes were drenched with overflowing fountains of blood at their baptismal ceremonies. Heroic pagan legends told of the pleasure given to their one god of wrath by some hero who slew 1,000 men with the jawbone of an ass, and similar heroic stories conceived by barbarians who still remembered their primate days and still loved bloodshed, slaughter, and conquest of man by man. Great civilizations grew and fell again, each time to arise a little higher and again fall. Relics and monuments remained above the earth to tell of these civilizations, pyramids and temples and tombs in Egypt, in the high Andes, in the Yucatan, in Tibet and India. Evil became a reality as man thought evil and practiced it. Evil became legendary. Magic, the supernatural, the unnatural, and the miraculous formed the basis of thousands of pagan legends about evil and the reality of evil. The most damaging of these pagan legends to human progress is that monstrous legend which would have you believe that a serpent could have intelligent conversation with a woman, that a serpent had knowledge of good and evil, that good and evil grew on a tree, and that evil came into the world because a man ate an apple. The viciousness of the legend lies in the assumption that the evil and sin of the world is God's holy law of mating, which unites fathers and mothers of creation into one so that they can again create more fathers and mothers to continue God's plan. It made our God of love to be the creator of evil. This legend of evil creates evil itself by being one of the causes of plunging all that is good in man into 12 centuries of bestial sex degeneration. It bred cruelties and tortures of two inquisitions. Countless thousands of people still believe this early pagan legend, which typifies the stage of gross ignorance of the world of that day. It demonstrates how difficult it is for man to escape his own primacy. These legends have become tradition to man, which means that he believes things unthinkingly because he has always believed them. So he no longer subjects them to logical reasoning. Such beliefs hold mankind back by retarding the unfolding of his higher spiritual nature. Just as long as man prefers to be pagan by insisting upon pagan beliefs and practices, he will still be pagan. Man is always what he thinks. He cannot become spiritually exalted by being physically depraved or by thinking depravity. Pagan memories are still interwoven in our enlightenment of today as tradition, and tradition is strong because it is repeated unthinkingly. We even unthinkingly sing pagan tradition hymns. We sing, "There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunged beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains." That hymn would have been appropriate for a pagan baptismal festival where dozens of live animals were slaughtered to appease the bestial god of their own bestial conceiving, but not for gathering of gentle people who would shudder with terror at such a scene. It takes many centuries of higher civilizations to eliminate the traditional beliefs of our early pagan days, in which devils, demons, evil spirits, and other superstitions of that day's gross ignorance are still carried into this day. As long as our beliefs are pagan, our civilization will be pagan. God sent mind-illumined messengers to hasten the unfoldment of man's spiritual nature. The Buddha, Zoroaster, Moses, Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Jesus, to tell the one God of love. But tradition was stronger than truth. The male god of wrath and fear persisted in the day and still persists in ours. In their day and still persists in ours. For instance, we still continue to say we are a nation of God-fearing men, whereas we should say we are a nation of God-loving men. The roots of dead beliefs are hard to uproot, but man must suffer until they are rooted out of him. He must suffer by living in the world of his own making, and the kind of world he makes is the kind of man he is. Man thinking created the warring world of fear, hatred, enmity, and disunity we are forced to live in today. Man made it in his own likeness, in his own male thinking image. Genghis Khan made the world of his day in his own image. Then came Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, Frederick and Peter the Great, Ivan the Terrible, William the Conqueror, Napoleon, Bismarck, Hitler, Lenin, Stalin, Mussolini, and other male conqueror tyrants, dictators, marauding bands of Huns, Tartars, Menoks, Norsemen, and other terrorists who have made the world over repeatedly in their male images. Woman slowly rose in man's esteem in parts of the world. Wherever woman made her influence felt as the spiritual mate of her physical man, nations responded to that influence and progressed with great rapidity. Wherever woman was suppressed, however, that nation retrogressed. It could not keep up with world flow. The measure in which any country has progressed is the measure of its recognition of woman. Man still thinks of himself as master in his own house. He still thinks of his own mental superiority as ruler of world government and world business. He still thinks of a woman as a cook and homemaker. When women organized to fight for equal suffrage rights, men thought of it as an utter absurdity. But when man's wars made it imperative for women to share in manufacture and industry, she excelled men in many capacities, even though it was all new thinking for her. Man's seemingly total ignorance of God's plan concerning the man-woman mate relationship has made him unaware that he created man and woman as equal halves of one. For unity is impossible between two unequal halves. Man, the marauder, the fighter, the conqueror, has had millions of years to remember his life-destroying days of killing to take happiness away from others. Woman, the mother, the great giver of life, has had millions of years to remember the service she has given to man. The spiritual love nature of woman has never had a chance of balancing the progress of civilization, and, for that reason, civilizations have repeatedly fallen as our present civilization must inevitably fall because of its own unbalance and disunity in all of the essentials necessary for a normal existence. For 1,000 years, the pagan barbarian civilization remained at a very low, unchanging level. About 800 years ago, a greater spiritual awakening advanced man to an ever increasing level. Steadily gathering momentum, it progressed the human race farther intellectually in the last 100 years than in previous thousands of years. During the last 800 years, painting and music and literature, the greatest of spiritually transforming arts, came into being. Sculpture and architecture had been here before. These are the static arts which did not reach the soul of early man. The rhythms of music and painting express the meter of man's heartbeat and the universal heartbeat. They have the power to reach the soul through dynamism, which sculpture and architecture lacked. Wait, they have the power to reach the soul through their dynamism, which sculpture and architecture lacked. The diatonic scale in music was unknown to man until 100 years after Leonardo lived. Caesar never knew the divine music which is ours to know. The human consciousness had not unfolded in that day to the stage where it would have meaning. A Bach, Beethoven, or Wagner rendition would have been but boring noise to a Caesar or Nero, just as it still is to a prized fighter or any lover of bloodshedding sports today. An age of paganism which glorified in gladiatorial fights, one in which the greatest pleasure of women and children was in witnessing lions rend humans, or bloodshed of man by man in the arenas of that day, could not possibly have understood our tonal music had they had it. Music, however, was the greatest cause of bringing love into the human race. As music, painting, and sculpture of the great masters came into the world, cruelty and bloodlust went out of it. The rhythmic beat of all great music and the tonal harmonies of all great art interprets the universal heartbeat. It reaches man's soul by inducing inner thinking to replace outer sensing. Inner thinking is meditative and gives birth to desire for praying, and prayer is an innate and intuitive desire to talk to God. The growth of music awakened the spiritual in man and inspired in him the urge to find God. Music and worship are synonymous. Each is the other. The Christian spirit rose from its ashes and uplifted man one step higher upon his long climb. It was but a little step higher, but it transformed the human race. The power of the newly awakened Christian spirit in the first spiritual rebirth of this barbarian age brought world culture and its consequent higher stage of human friendliness up to the standard which gave us the 8 great centuries of progress, which we are now about to lose. It did not bring knowledge, however. Man's concepts are still pagan. His concept of God is still greatly powerful. His concept of God is still a great, powerful man with a physical body and a great capacity to wrath. Human understanding is not yet unfolded to the point where it can comprehend power and love in an invisible God, even though the greatest power known to man is gravity, and gravity is invisible, nor can the pagan mind comprehend heaven being anywhere but above the earth and among the clouds, where good people ascend to when they die. Pagan concepts inherited from pagan legends and superstitions prevent Christian practice from advancing at the same pace as Christian spirit. As indicated by the steady rise of world culture, a Christian spirit without Christian practice will never make a Christian world. The ultimate of a Christian world is the unity and peace which comes from knowledge of God's ways and practices. It means one world unity and brotherly love and obedience to God's one law of rhythmic balanced interchange in all man's transactions with man, as nature observes that law in her transactions. Spiritual culture rose steadily for centuries, but barbaric greed and primate memories of blood and conquest in the masses were not eliminated sufficiently to balance the spiritual growth which was transforming the few. Spiritual growth, however, was sufficiently strong in man to give birth to an electric age which completely transformed world thinking and living conditions. Our past 100 years of progress have been greater than all the centuries preceding it, since the days of the Renaissance. But the year 1900, man had gained the whole world at the price of his soul. During all these centuries, while the silent voice had been awakened, the divine spark in countless thousands of souls, the masses preferred to continue their barbarian practices. Today, the mass barbarian is syno. Today, the mass barbarian is synocopating. Synocopating. I don't know that word. Today, the mass barbarian is synocopating the universal rhythms of the great masters into the jungle rhythms of their understanding. The high point of scientific advancement is now an integral part of the huge man-killing industry which man has set up in his man-built world, instead of the golden rule, love ye one another, world which is the basis of the Christian spirit. As love goes out of the world, ugliness and brutality are coming into it in all human culture, as in all human practice. As culture-loving people of the Hellenic age saw its beautiful sculptures thrown into the seas, so do the culture-loving people of today see the ugliness of modern art gradually infiltrating even our art museums. And the jazz of jungle rhythms displace our gracious minute and our happy Viennese waltz. Even the musical instruments which they have the capacity of reaching the soul through their likeness to nature's sounds are being discarded from all but the symphony orchestras and replaced with noisy brass instruments to please the ever-increasing decadence of the masses. The poetic quality of music rendition is being replaced with raucous noise more reminiscent of the jungle than of gentility. The violin, flute, and piccolo are suggestive of whispering winds, the song of birds, the reedy sounds of insects, and the humming, droning, buzzing, and chirping sounds of woodlife. The soft, dreamy, restful dinner music of the 1900 era, which lent inspiration to social gatherings, has been replaced with ear-splitting brass horns and in dining rooms, nightclubs, and television. The rhythmic harmonies of our fast disappearing cultural age are no longer heard. In their stead, as much discord as possible is introduced in the syncopated melodies to destroy all that is fine and uplifting in the greatest of the spiritual arts. Cultural degradation is always paralleled by sex degradation, sex perversion, and fast lowering of the moral code. Every falling civilization follows this same pattern of growing sex bestiality, which multiplies as culture lowering. Where's the beginning of that sentence? Nope, gotta start over. Cultural degradation is always paralleled by sex degradation, sex perversion, and fast lowering of the moral code. Every falling civilization follows the same pattern of growing sex bestiality, which multiplies as culture lowers and the fine arts disappear from their thrones. The increase of sex perversion in Greece kept pace with its death of culture. This pattern is again repeating itself in our own rapidly falling civilization. All forms of sex perversion are rapidly increasing, even among the children of our present age. Sex perversion leads very rapidly to the jungle and awakens even in children the desire to kill. Over and over again, the world is shocked by youth killings for sheer pleasure. The world attributes these events to youth delinquency instead of that they are the fruit of world decadence. Delinquency is not confined to youth alone. There is marked delinquency in every walk of life. The rapid increase in crime by adult delinquents more than matches the degradation of our youth. The matter which should greatly concern our present day intellectuals is the fact that each succeeding generation of youths will be born into a lower moral status of civilization. Eventually, all that is fine in the human race will not even be a memory for centuries, except among the few who keep the light burning between these dark periods in monasteries or secluded places. The spiritually exalted ones kept the light burning during the Dark Ages until the rebirth of civilization in the 14th century. Unless we immediately begin to transform the human race to a man for man basis to replace the present man against man basis, the human race is as certain to fall again as it has so many times fallen in the past for the same reason. If this does not happen, there are more of the spiritually illumined along us to carry the light over the dark intervening centuries than there were during the last fall of man. Even these would find life hard, difficult, and dangerous. They would have to live very secluded lives in remote mountain wilderness, and very probably in high walled castles of medieval architecture to protect their groups from marauding bandits and the lawless centuries which would follow. Crime and youth delinquency have brought such moral degradation to the world that thinking people are now saying that only a great spiritual awakening can save the world. A spiritual awakening is impossible which does not conform with spiritual laws. Spiritual teachings which do not conform with God's law can be likened to the desires of a man who wished to be good, happy, and peaceful, but acquired money for that purpose by burglary, larceny, and cruelty. The foregoing is an excellent picture of our man-made world since its first spiritual resurrection in the 14th century. This could have not happened had man and woman grown equally in the building of our civilization. It is quite probable that the human race could have found the enduring peace for which it was searching within another 100 years, if it had not been forced to reap the harvest of enmity and hate which empire builders had sown into the world pattern. This is a great pity, for the world is on the eve of a greater 100 years than our last 100. The electronic age which is now in the making will make our present miracle world seem quite primitive. This promised unfolding will be impossible to build against the resistance of the present world retrogression toward ever multiplying disunity. We have not been permitted that extra 100 years of peace which would have probably led to the equalization of man and woman in government affairs. We are now beginning to put this equalization into practice, however, for men no longer think of it as being ridiculous for women to occupy high seats in industry and government. Had man made woman worked equally together in these past 100 years, the return to man killing would undoubtedly not have happened, and we would not now be facing the terrible harvest of past man killings. We have prayed for happiness, peace, and prosperity for ourselves, while plundering our neighbor to take his peace, happiness, and prosperity away from him. Unknowingly, we have actually done to ourselves what we have done to our neighbor. We built the image of ourselves into our empires, and they tumbled like a house of cards. In killing 1,000,000 sons of neighbors, we killed 10 million of our own sons. For each $1 billion plundered, here we go. For each $1 billion plundered to enrich us, we are impoverished by $10 billion of debt. We did not know what we were doing. We were immoral pagans working according to the pattern of our barbarian nature, as truly and as normally as primate man acted in the pattern of his true primate nature. Ignorance of the law does not excuse us, however, it never does. We shall continue to live in a barbarian world of our own making as long as we practice barbarian ways. We have not yet known man, nor God, sufficiently to comprehend our close relation with which necessitates coordination and cooperation in whatever God and man do together. Man's failure to work with God, and the penalty which he brings down upon himself for such disobedience, is plainly set down in the following quotation from the message of the divine Iliad. Serve first thy brother, hurt first thyself rather than thy neighbor. Gain not from his unbalanced by thy giving. Protect thou the weak with thy strength. For if thou use thy strength against him, his weakness will prevail against thee, and thy strength will avail thee not. Man has violated this law all through his barbarian days, and is still violating it while hoping to evade its consequences. Every weak nation he has conquered is today the conqueror. The very theory of conquest by war is for the purpose of enrichment, while the effect of every war ever fought by man is impoverishment. How many more times must man suffer the agonies of war before he finally knows the law by paying the price of learning his lessons through more suffering? Summary. The barbarian age might be briefly summed up as a sense-dominated, man-controlled age in which greed for material gain motivated man to take as much as he could get by giving as little as he could give. During its history, the spiritual qualities of man began to unfold because of the birth among. Gotta start that over. During its history, the spiritual qualities of man began to unfold because of the birth among them of divinely inspired messengers who came into the world to help man's unfolding. Their teachings were beyond man's comprehension, but the awakening of desire for spiritual unfoldment grew strong in him. These teachings might have brought the human race to a realization of its oneness with God and the brotherhood of man, to save for these teachings might have brought the human race to a realization of its oneness with God and the brotherhood of man, save for the much stronger innate memories of its primate man-killing days. During its entire period, this age has been marked with a brief belief in evil because of a practice of which it believed to be evil. Its most hopeful sign of progress was the rise of woman from utter insignificance to a sufficiently high place within the last 50 years to allow her to vote in man's affairs of government, which still remained man-controlled, however. That is the first step toward the necessary man-woman equalization, but it is only a very little step. Because of these immaturities in the slowly unfolding human race, its civilizations fell many times, as our civilization is now once again inevitably falling. Let us pray that men and women of the world will unite in time to reverse this decadence to a more glorious renaissance than our world has ever known. We'll begin chapter 5 tomorrow.